What's up, guys? Got a nice little treat for the S2000. Picked up a set of Buddyclub N-spec coilovers for it. I want to get this thing ready for Honda Day, so I'm going to do a nice DIY video on how to install it and adjust the ride height and talk about preload. As you can see, I got the car already jacked up and the wheels off. I'm sure everyone knows how to do that and seen me do that probably a handful of times already. And at the end, I got a nice little surprise for everybody. All right, let's get to it. Now, I'm actually going to start with the fronts here. A little about my suspension I'm running now. I'm actually running stock struts, and I have Ibach Pro Line springs on it, but they really don't add too much of a drop to it. They ride absolutely phenomenal, but I just want to adjust the heights for it. And this won't be the case for everybody, but I'm running this X-Bar Megan Racing front strut bar here, and I got to remove this whole upper piece here because this is a solid piece. It's very solid, and it's a pain in the ass to get these studs from the struts through with that on there. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these 4 14mm nuts, and these are also OEM Honda 14mm bolts and nuts. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Now at the end there, I don't know if you would have noticed the strut bar actually popped a little bit, but you can see the strain that this thing really stiffens up the front end of this car. And all you really need to do all that is just a 14mm socket and with a 3/8 ratchet. Now you just wiggle this off, put it over in the pile of parts. On to the next step. Now that we got the upper 14mm bolts off, next what we're going to do is remove this 12mm bolt that holds the brake line on to the strut. And all you're going to need is a 12mm socket and a 3/8 ratchet. After that 12mm bolt is out, you have one last bolt, which is right here. This will be a 17mm. You're not going to need to hold anything from the other side because it has a welded nut on the strut right here. So you just got to take that last 17mm bolt out, and we'll be able to pull this strut out. Alright, now that those two 17mm are out, it actually turns out you don't have to take the lower ball joint out. I'm just so used to working on older Civics that it's almost habit to me now. But now that that upper control arm's out, you can literally just pull this strut out. And we had the new Buddyclub side by side. All right, let's get these things on. stock struts, they do not have a nut welded on, so you're going to have to go get a nut for your existing bolt. Thank God I have a 5-gallon bucket full of OEM Honda bolts. I'm going to go down and find some nuts for these. I'll be right back. Only about 2 minutes later, I found all the bolts. These are actually OEM Honda suspension bolts, or nuts, I should say. Now, with coilovers, anytime, they're always a lot shorter than the OEM strut and springs. And you can see here that you can't pull the strut down, so you're going to have to jack up the lower control arm. So, best way to align this nut and bolt for coilover, take your jack and you're going to jack up the lower control arm here. As you can see, it's only a couple pumps. Lines right up. Looks like we need to spin this just a little bit. I don't know how well you can see that. Need to put this down. Need both hands for this. And now the bolt's through. Now we can take our nut, put this on. And now I'm going to snug all these bolts up. I left these loose because if you would tighten them when the control arm's all the way down, if you tighten it, then when you lower the car, it's going to twist the bushings and put a lot of stress on them. So what you want to do is you want to tighten these two bolts up here when the control arm's jacked up. That way the bushings aren't twisted at extreme rate there. And then we're going to snug these up. Ball joints already tightened. We're going to tighten this 17mm nut and bolt here on the lower strut. And then the only bad thing about these coilovers that I see is they don't have a bracket for the brake line here. So we're going to use a zip tie. I know it's a little drifter style here, but we're going to use a zip tie here, and we're going to hold that up to the bottom of the strut. Alright, let's get all this done. Alright, now that we got the driver's side done, we're going to repeat the same process for the passenger side, but the only thing different is we learned that we don't have to take off the lower ball joint. So we already got the upper two nuts off, got the 12mm, two 17mm, and the bottom 17mm. So let's get this strut out. Alright, I just did the same thing to the other side here. Got this coilover in, everything's tightened up. Got the brake line mounted up there. Now we're going to put the top strut bar on here, and then the fronts will be done. Alright, we just got done buttoning up everything in the front. Strut bar's back in, everything's tightened, all the bolts are tightened, all the zip ties are on to hold the brake lines in. Now let's get to the rears. Alright, the rears actually seem a lot more simple because you don't have the strut going through the control arm. All you gotta do is just take this one 17mm nut off, and if you come into the trunk, actually don't have any of the rear interior panels. If anybody has a lead on any interior panels, comment, and we'll find a way to contact each other. But there's two 14mm behind what would be the interior panels here. Two 14mm there, and then another two 14 millimeters on the other side, and then just like the other bottom, just a 17 millimeter bolt. All right, let's get these out. First, gonna break this lower 17 millimeter loose. Bottom 17's out. Now let's go in the trunk and get this 14 millimeters out. Actually, I have to get an extension. This is just a 14 millimeter. 14 or 3/8 ratchet with the 3/8 ratchet wobble extension. Alright, now that it's loose, you can just have to pry down the suspension here to pull this out. And this will just come right out. So these are also eye-box springs in the back. Now let's go get the new coilover. Now to install these, it's pretty much just the reverse steps here. Pry bar, pry down the suspension a little bit. And holes up in the top. That's in place on there. We can start the bolts on the studs coming through. That way the strut doesn't fall out. Come back and retighten them. Now that the bottom's tight, I go inside and recheck these. Alright. Obviously you can see the backs are a little easier. There's a little less steps you have to do to install these. So let's get the other side done. Now to show, this is for this side in the trunk, the two 14 millimeters. This is a 8-inch wobble extension that allows the socket to wobble here using a deep socket. It actually feeds down here. It's perfect height, that way you can get the ratchet still on it. It also works for the back. You just gotta squish the rubber a little bit, but it's on. So I just want to show what tools to use to get to these. So let's get these upper nuts out here. Alright, you just take your pry bar and the upper control arm again. And pull it out. And you're done. Alright, I'm going to show a little comparison for the rears, since I didn't do that with the first one. Here's a comparison for the rears. I think one of the nice things about these Buddyclub coils are, in the top they machine a groove and put a O-ring washer in there. That way it isn't metal on metal. It cushions it, makes a quieter ride. It prevents squeaking. Also, these had the strut adjustment, so you can make it either soft or stiff. And they got quite a bit of travel that they can adjust on these too. Alright, let's get this one in. Alright, now that all the coilovers are on, I'm going to explain how to set preload. I can't actually show you because I bought these coilovers used and the preload is actually already set. Normally when you get a new pair of coilovers, the spring here is loose and you can move it up and down. Setting preload is when you take these two nuts right here and you just turn them to tighten a tension on the spring. That way the spring doesn't move anymore. When you tighten that, you want to do a couple turns past, that way it really puts a tension on it. And then you use this bottom nut to lock this so it doesn't move. And the bottom here, this is a lock nut here, and then you can spin the bottom section of coilover to raise your height. So I just wanted to give a quick explanation on how to set the preload on these coilovers. It's also the same for the fronts. There's a lock nut and then the upper nut, and the bottoms are actually the same, has a lock nut to adjust the heights also. Now to finish this install, these are the stock AP2 version 2 wheels. And the new wheels that I got are right here. These are JNC 005s. They're plus 30 in the front offset. They're 17 by 8.5 in the front. And the rears are plus 32 offset, and they're 9.5 inches wide. These are also 17s. And I got the Hankook Ventus V12 Evo 2s. These are the factory tire size here, so I don't really care for stretch too much, but you can see it just has a little bit of stretch. So I'm not going to be able to get the alignment done right away. I have to get my fenders rolled. I'm actually trying to find someone to roll the fenders because these wheels are definitely not going to fit, because this is an aggressive offset. So let's get these wheels on, see what the height's at, and eyeball the camber up. Alright guys, just got the wheels on, and you can see the fitment here. The coilovers, I just left them as they are. I didn't adjust anything, but I'm definitely going to have to get the fenders rolled, especially in the rear. They have a little bit of poke. Like I said, I did not adjust anything with the coilovers. They're definitely going to need a little work. And then once I get the fenders rolled here, you get this lip pulled in, then I can set their final ride height and then go take it to my old work and I can align it all. So just wanted to give a little picture here to see how it sits. This rear is definitely going to have to go down. The front's going to have to go down just a little bit, but I think this looks real good. It's going to turn out pretty good. And the only problem with these wheels that I have are the rear center caps. They have this webbing built into it, and it actually hits the nut, so I can't push it in all the way, which is a simple fix. All I gotta do is just grind this extra plastic down. So I'm gonna do all that in another video here. So I'm gonna pull the car to the side. It's gonna rain soon. In about 45 minutes, they're calling for heavy thunderstorms. So I'm going to clean up all the tools. If anybody's interested in stock struts with Eibach Pro Line springs on it, they only have about 7,000 to 10,000 miles on it, give or take. Leave it in the comments and we can get in touch with each other. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one.